Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's class. Tonight we're going to be talking about your nervous system. Why is this important? Well, I shouldn't have to tell you, but it controls everything in your body. So tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of bones, actually. I know, how does that relate to the nervous system? Well, nerves are innervate bone, okay? And one specific bone has a special name. That name is atlas. What is Atlas? Well, yes, it's a book of maps, right? But also it is a Greek god. And Atlas held the world on his shoulders. So if you think of the world of us, our nervous system, it's held on the shoulders of one particular bone. That bone happens to be C1, or your first cervical vertebra. Now, what's really cool about that is it has these little plateaus. They're called condyles that your skull rests upon. They're off to the sides, like your shoulders. So it is called Atlas because it holds your world, aka your brain, on its shoulders. What's very interesting about this particular vertebra is when it is misaligned or subluxated, it can cause a slew of problems. Now, I have a form that every new patient goes home with their subluxation patterns on them. And what's interesting is it shows the bodies and body parts or organs and organ systems that those nerves commonly go to and supply information to. The interesting thing is C1 should have an arrow that says see all. Okay, not C, but SEE, because it really does affect the entire nervous system. You see, C1 will actually surround the brainstem. Why is that important? Well, without a brainstem, you don't have a life. Okay, so if it occludes any part of that brainstem, it can cause a slew of different problems. Not just things like brain fog, which is one of the most common things of a subluxated C1, but also it can cause thyroid issues because it can cause issues with the pituitary gland. It can cause issues with digestion. It can cause issues with the vagus nerve. It can cause issues with everything. So this is why it's good to make sure that your C1 or Atlas is functioning as it is supposed to. How do you do that? Well, I can't tell you if mine's functioning because I can't assess my own C1. A doctor of chiropractic needs to. Now, I do have friends that will come and adjust me and vice versa because we know as chiropractors that we cannot self-manipulate. We cannot adjust our own Atlas. Okay? Can I adjust my hand? Absolutely. Right? But I can't my spine. And I make sure that I get adjusted, or at least checked, at a minimum of once a week. Now, many of you out there know that I was injured, if you watched last week's class, that I was injured because of repetitive motion trauma, and I injured my L3 disc again. So now I haven't re-injured it since, but that was a re-injury. And I was adjusted, I believe, 4 or 5 times just last week to make sure that my body is functioning as good as it possibly can. I don't care if my body's in pain. I mean, obviously I do, but that's not my main focus. My main focus is on function. And so I wanted to make sure that my function was doing well. Was I still in pain? Absolutely. Am I still in pain? Absolutely. Is the pain better than it once was? Absolutely. And that's all thanks to the nervous system. You see, a lot of people believe that the nervous system is mainly worried about pain. Would you believe that less than 10% of your nervous system sends pain signals? It's roughly 6%. So I've looked at a lot of different research, and some research shows as high as like 8 to 10%, and some shows as low as 5%. Most of what I read through like Spine, which happens to be a journal online through PubMed and things of that nature, it's about 6%. So that means 94% of your body does other, or of your nervous system does other things. So that's why if we solely look at how healthy we are, how well we're doing based on pain, it's like knowing how well your car's running based on the check engine light. Now, the check engine light tells you a lot, right? Tells you something's wrong. So does pain. Tells you something's wrong. Doesn't tell you what, but it gives you a good idea, right? It could be as simple with the check engine light as your gas cap or your O2 sensor, or your entire engine's about to collapse. You have no idea until you start to investigate. So you would take your car to the mechanic, or at least to somebody who has a diagnostic tool that can tell you what codes are coming up, right? You have to figure out what's wrong. Well, it's the same with your body and your own nervous system. When you're in pain, yes, that sucks. And yes, that's horrible. And that's not the only thing that's wrong. Because you see, when the bone is subluxated, it could be putting just barely enough pressure that it happens to irritate the pain fibers. And lo and behold, you're in pain. Or it could be completely crushing that nerve. And now you have asthma. You have heart palpitations, you have cravings of sweets, your sugar's all off, your A1C's all off, you have heartburn and pain, right? And lo and behold, you get adjusted and some of those things get better. So I'm not telling you that just getting adjusted will cure any of those things. I've seen patients, and myself included, who have had asthma issues nearly, if not completely, resolve under chiropractic care. I've had a patient who had been chronic heartburn sufferer so long that taking Prilosec and the other types of gastric juice. I'm sorry. So taking these antacids, that's the word I was looking for. So taking them for so long that they work by leaching calcium out of your bone to neutralize the stomach acid, that he ended up having osteoporosis. Okay. After a few adjustments, and I didn't know he had heartburn. Okay. After a few adjustments, this man said to me, "Would what you're doing have anything to do with heartburn?" I said, "Absolutely. This one that I have to adjust almost every time you're here, that one actually supplies the nerves to the cardiac sphincter, which is the top sphincter of your stomach. And if it's not sending a signal, it wouldn't know to close, or it might not know to open. And so you would either have that feeling of food stuck, or you'd have that feeling of acid burn." I said, "So absolutely, it could cause that." And he said, "That's really interesting." He says, anytime I had spaghetti, I'd have really bad heartburn. He said, if I had chocolate cake, I'd have really bad heartburn. If I had them both, I was done for. He said, but every once in a while I got that craving. I just knew I was done for, so I'd still have it. He said, I've been coming here about a week. I mean, not very long. And last night for dinner, I had my spaghetti and I had a piece of chocolate cake for dessert. And I just waited because I knew it was going to hit. It never hit. I said, well, that's fantastic. He goes, it is. And I'm really mad. And we'll call him Bill. It's not his name. I said, Bill, why are you mad? I mean, that's a fantastic thing. He said, Doc, I've been taking these over-the-counter and even some prescription-level antacid type things for 40 of my 60-plus years. My bones are shot because of it. If I knew 40 years ago that getting adjusted would have completely solved this for me, I wouldn't be a pharmacist. I'd be a chiropractor. And I said, oh my gosh, I mean, that warms my heart, and I'm also sorry that I didn't know you 40 years ago where I could have adjusted you then, and your life could have been completely changed. You see, my life was completely changed, right? Because my nerves, I was in a car accident. And remember, we talked about pain, right? Pain, check engine light. I wasn't in pain after the car accident. I had my feet up on the dash, so I slumped in the chair. And we were here in Traverse City, my mom and I, and we got rear-ended. Okay, we stopped at a crosswalk because people were crossing. That was the law. Actually, I don't know if it was the law then, but that was the nice thing to do. And we got rear-ended by this guy in a big Toyota pickup. And 12 years old boy, I thought it was the coolest sound in the world. The pop of the trunk, the shatter of the glass. And I thought it was so cool because I didn't have any pain. Now, a lot of people would attribute that to the fact that adrenaline, right? Okay, next day I wasn't in pain. I never was in pain after that. Well, fast forward 10 years, and where that direct blow of impact hit my spine has turned a ligament called the anterior longitudinal ligament, or the ligament that runs down the front of the spine, turned that entire ligament from T2 to T6, so 5 vertebra, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, turned it to bone. And I am fused from T2 to T6. But I was not in pain. So no pain, no problem, right? Wrong. Pain is not the biggest thing. Function is. Had we gone to a chiropractor then, probably wouldn't be fused. So am I mad at my mom and my dad for not taking me? Absolutely not. You can't be mad at somebody for not doing something they had no knowledge of. Okay? I tell this story because we as people do really stupid things. Like me having my feet up on the dash was a very stupid thing. And I'm paying the ultimate price because of it, because my spine is now fused. Okay? Now, what's interesting is my asthma at the time got worse. And I had to drop out of playing soccer because I couldn't play soccer anymore. I was always having these asthma attacks. And then I started gaining a lot of weight because, well, you're more sedentary, you're not doing things. And it sucked, right? And I lived a pretty sad life, actually. I knew that every day I had to use my inhaler. I couldn't function without it, right? I had asthma attacks 2, 3, 4 times a day, 7 days a week. If I walked outside and it was hot inside and I walked, like winter day, and I walk outside and it's cold, I'd have an asthma attack from the temperature change. Or vice versa. If I walked from air conditioning out into hot and humid, I'd have an asthma attack. Pollen, asthma attack. Smokers walking by, asthma attack. Try to exercise, asthma attack. I mean, you name it. I got stressed out, asthma attack. Right? It did not matter. Everything caused an asthma attack. And my medical doctors at the time, Dr. Packnikar, I remember that. He was my pediatrician. Super nice guy. I don't blame him either. He didn't know anything about chiropractic. But he just said, well, it looks like this is going to be something you're going to live with the rest of your life. Most kids outgrow it. You're not outgrowing it. So it's something you're going to have to live with. So we just took that to be gospel. We didn't know any better. Well, fast forward, now I'm in my early 20s, and I go under chiropractic care because I had a coupon for a free massage. Yay! Who doesn't like a free massage? So the doctor who actually answered the phone at the time, Dr. Mike, said, well, your insurance covers chiropractic too. Would you like an evaluation? Okay, I have no idea what that is. If it covers it, fine. I was working as a teacher down in Grand Haven, and so I had Mesa insurance. And sure, yeah, let me take a look. Well, that covered my exam. And that's when he took x-rays and said, "What in the world did you do to your spine?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" "Well, I mean, I'm always sore in my mid-back, but it's just every day. I didn't think anything of it, right? It was just my life." I was really there because the job I was working was very hard on my body, and my low back was starting to bother me, and my knees were bugging me since I was a kid. And, he found that my pelvis was really, really externally rotated bilaterally and found that I was fused in my mid-back. And we started talking. I said, I was in a car accident when I was about 12, had my feet up on the dash. Could that? He goes, "Absolutely, that could have caused it," right? So that's what we attribute it to. Now, it sucks because it's never going to get better, right? Once bones change, it's permanent, irreversible change. Once discs change, that's a permanent, irreversible change. So that sucks, right? But I learned then what was wrong. And even though those areas were partially fused, he would still adjust them. And what was interesting is those areas go to your heart, to your lungs, to your diaphragm, to all your vital organs. And lo and behold, my asthma started to get better. I started to not need my inhaler every day. And then eventually, I started leaving my inhaler at home. Now, to give you a hint, I had an inhaler since I was about 10, maybe even 8. So let's say 10 years old. So I had my inhaler for the majority of my life, right? Here I'm in my early 20s. And now I start forgetting this thing. That's like if you have a bee allergy walking out without an EpiPen. That's not cool, right? Or many of us, that's like walking out of the house with our phone or our wallet or our keys. You just don't do it, right? I would always check. Okay, I've got my wallet, I've got my keys, I've got my inhaler, right? Didn't really have cell phones back then. Yes, I'm that old. So it was interesting. Well, after about a year of care, and a lot of care, I didn't need my inhaler anymore. I haven't used a rescue inhaler in 2 decades. Now, I did say that once bones change, it's permanent, irreversible. And that bone issue that I have, that fusion, is still there. But it took pressure off the nerve. So my function is better. Now, do I still have asthma attacks? Well, if you guessed yes, you'd be right. I still do. And when I do, I make sure I call up my buddy and I get adjusted extra. And lo and behold, that symptom of tightness in my chest, wheezing, not being able to take a deep breath, all of that is resolved. So that's pretty cool, right? My function got better. Do I have pain still? Absolutely, I still have pain. I'm in constant pain in my back right through there. Some days are worse, some days are better, but every day I'm in pain. Okay? But my function is better. I care more about function because if you can function better, you can deal with pain. People don't come to me because of pain. People come to me because the pain's stopping them from doing something they want to do, or more likely, what they have to do. And it's all because the nervous system is being occluded. It's being pinched from a subluxation, most likely. So when we talk about Atlas, that bone, that top bone that holds your world on its shoulders, is the most commonly subluxated bone in the human body. Because the birth process. And then it's left uncorrected in many people for decades. So my goal is to make sure that I check every child that comes through my office to make sure that their atlas is clear. You see, 80% of completely unassisted births have a subluxation at C1 or C2. 80%. Once hands go on, it is 100%. So, should children get checked? Absolutely. So if you want to get checked because you've never been checked, give me a call. If you want to get your kids checked because this just kind of rung a bell and said that makes a ton of good sense, give us a call. You can find us here in Elk Rapids. We're right on Bridge Street, right across from the Gilroys, where they got it and I adjusted. So I hope you guys found this very informative. My call to action to you is to get checked. Get your spine, especially Atlas, checked by a chiropractor to see if they can help you improve your function. Pain is just a small portion of everything. Function is far more important. Do you want to be able to play with your kids, your grandkids, or your great-grandkids? If you answered yes to any of that, that's function. Give me a call. I look forward to seeing all of you later this week and early next week for your adjustments as needed. And as always, I bid you a beautiful evening, and thank you for attending. Bye-bye.